Sir Jon Coles gave evidence before the inquiry, and having read your witness statement, he described your evidence in it that your department hadn't done any planning by mid-March 2020 for school closures because the priority was keeping schools open as an extraordinary dereliction of duty. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I think what was interesting about modules 1 and modules 2 of the inquiry was what government had been going through was, I thought it was a process that there'd been for long-term planning in terms of dealing with the pandemic and putting actions in place all the way through to try and get things right into terms of how we thought a pandemic would be. And that was sort of examined in Module 1. I think in Module 2, I think there were failures. There are failures that were demonstrated. It showed Module 2 where those failures had been in terms of planning and really understanding the enormity of what a pandemic would mean and how that would impact every aspect of government, and government not really grasping the enormity of that. And I think that was reflective in the DFE. There were lots of actions that were being taking place which we thought were the right actions, but as we look back at it now, we should have had different actions in place in order to be better prepared for it. So I readily accept that there were many mistakes that were made both pre-start of the pandemic and in those early stages of the pandemic, because I don't think the DFE was any different to the number 10 or the Cabinet Office or other departments that were leading the way in terms of dealing with that pandemic.
When you saw this advice, again, was there any realisation on your part that, again, this could have profound implications for children should it come to pass?
The whole government policy at the time was about maintaining both the economy and schools to be open. And I do not believe that the significant weight was attached to maybe the scientific advice that should have been, that would have then informed and changed the approach that policymakers, both civil servants and politicians, would have had in relation to dealing with this.
So you accept that there's no issue with the scientific advice that was being given. The issue is how that advice was taken by government ministers like you.
I don't think it's probably my place to sort of, as not a scientist, to sort of judge the quality of scientific advice. And there's an immense amount of scientific advice, a lot of it which was excellent, some of it which wasn't always as strong. But I think everyone, in that February period, wasn't putting. I think this was what we saw repeatedly in Module 2, that the weight wasn't put on to that sort of emerging scientific evidence that did clearly prove to be right, and didn't put enough weight onto it. And the whole focus and emphasis of government wasn't probably sharp enough in terms of dealing with that. And that was the case in my department, of which I'm sorry for, because I readily accept that, I was Secretary of State, and it was my responsibility, and I would, understand that, with the benefit of knowing what we know now, I would have certainly wished to do things in a very, very different manner. And everyone totally understood as to how this was going to change everything. I recall being in meetings where this is sort of a cabinet meeting where the question was asked about, face masks and such like, and the idea of wearing a face mask seemed so alien to anything that we would do in this country. And when we were, sort of advised that this actually would be a very negative thing to be doing, well, in reality as the pandemic progressed, things that we thought we would never have been doing or would never need to do were things that we ended up having to do. And I think the whole government and my department itself should have had a clearer sense and understanding of just how things that we could never believe would have been possible were going to be the things that we were going to have to do. And ideally, you would have had this done in 2013, 2014, 2015, where every action that you take doesn't either feed a narrative or, press speculation, because it's been done in the calm of no pandemic. But in light of the fact that that sort of pathway wasn't there, we should have, right across government, understood the significance much better and bitten the bullet and made those plans in a way that would have helped later on.